Chapter 1683. Hiss. In the hazy black fog, Ophuka's hisses resounded. One could faintly hear the anger in his voice. The huge black python seemed to be roaming in space. It twisted its huge body agilely and coiled around Xuan'ai. Its huge head hung down from midair. Its pair of snake eyes stared intently at Noah. There was an unusually dense ferocious glint in its eyes. Obviously, after a series of attacks, it was unable to do anything to Noah at all. This fact made the Ophiuchi star spirit, who was known as the 13th door that was even higher than the 12 zodiac gates, feel unusually furious. Of course, it wasn't just Overukus. Xuan'ai also felt a little anxious. She held the pitch-black star spirit key that was emitting an ominous purplish-black light and looked at Noah with a sharp gaze. Then, Xuan'ai said these words. "Why aren't you attacking?" Knowing how powerful Noah was, Xuan'ai immediately used her biggest trump card at the start of the match, bringing out her greatest strength. However, compared to Xuan'ai, Noah didn't use any of his strength from the beginning to the end. He only dodged continuously and circled around Overukus without launching an attack at all. If Noah used the magic that could continuously shoot out magical light beams like he did against Jura yesterday, Xuan'ai might have been defeated by now. Xuan'ai, who was clearly aware of this, had been wary of Noah's magic cannon. In the end, Noah didn't use it at all, and didn't even launch an attack. This made Xuan'ai, who was full of energy from the beginning just to let Noah see her growth, feel like she was being looked down upon and betrayed. She couldn't help but feel a dark emotion rising in her heart. Under Xuan'ai's sharp gaze, Noah only slowly opened and closed his hand. After being silent for a while, he suddenly opened his mouth and spoke. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, "Because I don't know how much power I should use to deal with you." Upon hearing this, Xuan'ai was slightly taken aback, and then some anger finally appeared in her eyes. "In other words, are you looking down on me?" "No, you're very strong. Even in my guild, your strength is definitely enough to rank in the top 10 magic shooters. Other than the president, only the current S-rank magic shooters in the guild can guarantee a complete victory over you." Noah shook his head and looked directly at Xuan'ai. "However, I'm an exception." "An exception?" Xuan'ai frowned in confusion. "What do you mean?" "Although it sounds like I'm boasting, I have to tell you." Noah smiled indifferently. "Actually, with my current strength, I probably can't be compared to humans, right?" His words that sentence, which caused an uproar in the surroundings. Not only the audience, but also the other magic casters from the other guilds couldn't help but sneered at Lin. Admittedly, Noah was indeed very strong. He could easily defeat even the 5th-ranked Great Magus Saint. In the past, he had even killed a Great Magus Saint. But even so, to say that he was above all humans, no matter who it was a joke. Only the main members of Fairy Tail couldn't help but recall the battle between Noah and Achenalia on Celestial Wolf Island. At that time, the strength that Noah displayed was simply comparable to that of a demon god. Even the black dragon Achenalia, who had destroyed a huge country in Revelation, was able to fight evenly with him. Could that kind of strength be compared to humans? Therefore, the main members of Fairy Tail were collectively silent. Of course, even the main members of Fairy Tail did not know about this. In fact, at that time, the reason why Noah was able to fight Achenalia to a draw was that his authority had not yet been adapted to this world and couldn't be used. Otherwise, if Noah could even kill a god, Achenalia naturally wouldn't be a problem. Even if the power of authority was excluded, compared to that time, the current Noah was only stronger. Although at that time, the powerful gate of Babylon was no longer by his side and the ability value that gave Noah astonishing physical strength was also lost, the current Noah had strength that he didn't have at that time. For example, the third perpetual motion mechanism soul. For example, Aster, who had recovered all the power that even the Elven King, who was the elemental incarnation of the world, was afraid of. Another example was Athena, who had assimilated with the blade of salvation that could even cut stars. With these powers, even if Noah lost his authority, ability value, and treasury, he still wouldn't be weaker than when he fought Achenalia on Celestial Wolf Island. Thus, ignoring the clamor around him, Noah looked at the astonished Shwenai and said, "Do you know how much power I used when I fought Jula?" The surroundings suddenly became silent. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, confusion written all over their faces. And those high mages from the major guilds all had shocked expressions. This was especially true for the members of Lamia Scales. They couldn't help but stand up. "What does he mean by that?" Leo asked in shock and anger. Could it be that when he fought Mr. Jula, he didn't use his full strength? "Liar!" Surely Leah shouted indignantly. "That's definitely a lie." Among the shocked and angry high mages of Lamia Scale, Jula didn't say anything. His eyes were fixed on Noah's body, and his eyes began to flicker. Under such circumstances, Noah spoke bluntly. "I'll be direct. At that time, the power I used was probably less than 1% of my full strength, right?" Hearing this sentence clearly, everyone opened their eyes wide. Jula's eyes suddenly set off waves, and finally, he laughed bitterly. "Less than 1%. What a joke." Leo said angrily. How could that kind of thing be true? It wasn't just the Lamia Scale sorcerer. Everyone present snorted in contempt. This included the members of Saber-Tooth. "There should be a limit to boasting," Olga said sarcastically. Using less than 1% of his power to easily defeat the 5th of the 10 great Saint Mages. Does he really think that people will believe such words? Sting, Roger, and Lucifer also had a look of ridicule on their faces. The surrounding audience suddenly began to point at Noah, obviously not believing Noah's words at all. Noah acted as if he didn't hear the clamor and mockery from the surroundings, and continued to speak. "So, from the beginning, I didn't think of using my full strength in this great demon battle drill. As long as I can guarantee victory, that's enough." At this point, Noah looked directly at Shwenai. "However, facing you, I'm somewhat conflicted. If I don't use my full strength, I feel that I'm really looking down on you. Because of this, I didn't make a move. But now, I've decided." Noah said word by word. "I'll let you see the extent of my power now." After saying this, Noah raised his hand, and with a flash, a small sword suddenly appeared in his hand. It was a small sword that was completely platinum in color. "Athena," Noah said softly. "Is there a problem?" A voice immediately sounded in Noah's heart. "Facing such an opponent, you still need to use me. I really can't do anything about you." Athena smiled sweetly. "However, this concubine is already yours. We are destined to be together, so you can do whatever you want with me." The corners of Noah's mouth slowly rose. At this moment, the endless energy in Noah's body was transformed into divine might. Like a wild flow of turbulence, it surged into the small platinum sword in his hand under Noah's control. Clang! Immediately, a dazzling radiance as bright as the sun blossomed from the small platinum sword. That brilliance illuminated the entire world. Chapter 1684. Clang! The dazzling platinum light that was as bright as the sun turned into tens of thousands of rays of light that bloomed in the center of the venue. It surged out like a tide and instantly covered the entire area. It was so dazzling that it was hard to imagine. Everyone in the venue cried out in surprise one after another. Then, their entire field of vision was pierced by the dazzling light, and they all subconsciously closed their eyes. At this moment, the thick black fog that filled the entire venue was dispersed by the platinum light. The pitch-black giant snake Ophucus let out a sharp cry, its voice filled with confusion. At this moment, no one's field of vision was not filled by the dazzling platinum light, causing a commotion. However, amidst the commotion, an extremely clear voice reverberated like a chant. Divine starlight, lightning of salvation, goddess wisdom, indestructible steel, sword, appear in my hand. It was a language that no one in this world could understand. This was because it was an elven incantation written in the elven language. It did not belong to this world at all. Therefore, everyone could only hear a series of incomprehensible and mysterious incantations. Then, the platinum light that illuminated the entire area surged and became even more dazzling. In order to adapt to the dazzling platinum light, the people in the venue did not know how much time they had to use. When their field of vision had more or less recovered a little, the audience that filled the entire venue finally realized. The platinum light that filled the entire area originated from a sword. A sword that was completely platinum in color, as bright as the sun, blooming with tens of thousands of rays of light. Such a mystical and sacred sword was now tightly held in Noah's hand. He raised it high into the sky and released a dazzling light to the surroundings. Staring at the sacred platinum sword, everyone in the venue became absent-minded at this moment. Including Xuanai. That. Xuanai said with great difficulty. What is that? Hearing Xuanai's voice, Noah slowly retracted the divine blade that was raised high into the sky. He pointed it diagonally to the ground and softly said. This is a divine sword that can even sever a star. Its name is Heavenly Sword of Salvation. Heavenly Sword of Salvation. Xuanai's voice was filled with uncertainty. A divine sword that can even sever a star. What a joke. He must be joking. How could such a weapon exist in this world? This was Xuanai's thought, and also the thought of everyone in the venue. Everyone thought that Noah was definitely joking. However, no one present was able to voice their thoughts as they stared at the platinum sword that seemed to absorb all the light in the world, shining as resplendently as the sun. Their faces were filled with uncertainty. Then, Noah said. I know you don't believe me, Noah said faintly. However, you will soon believe it. After he finished speaking, Xuanai of the world, Heavenly Sword of Salvation, buzz. Following a clear trembling sound that seemed to reverberate in everyone's heart, the dazzling light that bloomed from the Heavenly Sword of Salvation suddenly rushed into the sky. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Amidst the piercing sounds of the air being torn apart, streaks of platinum light shot up into the sky and converged above the giant egg, gradually condensing into a sphere. Like a celestial body, it continued to emit dazzling light as it rotated. Not long after, a huge platinum sun that was larger than the entire giant egg, with a diameter of more than 1,000 meters, suddenly appeared under everyone's gaze. It burst forth with terrifying fluctuations that shook the entire space, causing the surrounding space to slightly distort. Looking at the huge platinum sun that was suspended above, everyone's mouth was wide open, and their faces were filled with horror. At this moment, even the most ordinary spectator understood what was going on. What he was looking up to was the light of salvation that could bring hope to everyone, and also bring death to everyone. When the platinum sun fell from the sky, even if it was the planet itself, it would directly penetrate to the deepest part of the planet's core. That was a scene that would only appear in dreams. That scene was both sacred and terrifying. Impossible. Justin looked up at the platinum sun, as if he had lost his soul, and murmured lifelessly. Impossible, that kind of thing, that kind of thing. Lucius said in a trembling voice. How could there be, monster? Olga's voice was filled with fear. That guy is a monster. Is that his true power? Even Rog stared at the sun in the sky in a daze, his hands trembling slightly. Is that why humans can't be compared to him? Without a doubt, that was not a power that humans could resist. In the face of such power, even the strongest guild in the Fiori kingdom, what could they do? Facing such power, as long as they were human, they could only look up. That was because in the face of such power, humans were just too insignificant. If even the entire human race was so insignificant, then the so-called strongest guild in the kingdom was even more insignificant. Hence, regardless of whether it was the most ordinary spectator or in existence known as one of the 10 strongest saint archmages of the continent, they could only look up at the incomparably dazzling sun at this moment, falling into an inextricable state of shock. Hiss. The Ophiuchus star spirit called Ophiuchus roared at the sun in the sky, but his voice was filled with fear. Xuan'ai couldn't help but take 2 steps back, her entire body trembling, and her eyes filled with horror. Looking at Xuan'ai, Noah's voice was so calm that it was terrifying. Surrender. It was a simple sentence, but it made Xuan'ai's heart tremble. Xuan'ai clenched her teeth, desperately trying to raise the star spirit key in her hand, but she didn't know why she couldn't exert any strength, causing the hand that was holding the star spirit key to tremble uncontrollably. Looking at the elven magic device called Heavenly Sword of Salvation, raised up high, and easily created a sun, displaying terrifying power, Xuan'ai's heart was filled with despair. There was no chance of winning. There was absolutely no chance of winning. Even if she fought back, he only needed to gently wave the heavenly sword in his hand, and everything would be over. Not only the girl called Xuan'ai. It wasn't just the star spirit named Ophiuchus. As long as Noah waved the heavenly sword of salvation in his hand, the sun in the sky would fall, then, including the mountain where the giant egg Fractorius sat, including the city of Crocus in the center of the Fiori kingdom, everything would disappear in an instant. Therefore, Xuan'ai had no chance of winning. No. In the face of such power, even if all the humans in this world combined, they still had no chance of winning. Understanding this point, the star spirit key in Xuan'ai's hand finally slid down. Ding! With a crisp sound, the jet-black star spirit key fell to the ground, and the purplish-black radiance on it disappeared bit by bit. Hiss! Ophiuchus let out a sigh of relief, and his figure also disappeared in the air, returning to the star spirit realm. As for Xuan'ai, she directly knelt on the ground with her hands on the ground, lowered her head, and her delicate body kept trembling. After a long time, Xuan'ai finally squeezed out a voice as if she was sobbing. "I surrender." This voice was extremely clear. Because, other than this voice, there was no other voice in the venue. In the eerily silent venue, Xuan'ai's voice finally woke up Chao Body on the rostrum, and he reflexively picked up the microphone and stuttered. "Shua. Xuan'ai surrenders. Therefore, the winner is Noah Doria from Fairy Tale B Team." Thus, the winner was decided. Relying on his own strength, it was enough to display all the power of the heavenly sword. Therefore, Aelix did not know that Noah himself was a different kind of lumen starlight. So that's how it is, so lumen starlight is in Noah Doria's hands. The greed in Aelix's heart finally erupted. "I must get it. No matter if it is lumen starlight or that weapon. They all belong to me." Noah, who did not know the feelings of the others, only looked at Xuan'ai, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground, raised his foot, and walked over. During this process, the heavenly sword of salvation, in Noah's hand turned into a burst of light particles and turned back into a small platinum sword. It was pinned to his waist. Then, Noah came in front of Xuan'ai, looked down at Xuan'ai who was sitting there paralyzed, and said softly, "Just like what we agreed on, I hope you can tell me everything." Xuan'ai lowered his head and did not speak. After a while, Xuan'ai took out a key from his pocket and showed it to Noah. That key was not the extremely precious golden key of the 12 zodiac gates, nor was it the key of the 13th gate, which was even more valuable than the 12 zodiac gates. It was only the cheapest star elemental key. The star elemental that was summoned using this star elemental key, it was estimated that not to mention having a certain degree of power, it would not be strange for it to only have ornamental value. Such a star elemental key could even be bought in an ordinary magic tool shop. However, such a key, not only did Xuanai use a string to string it together, he even hung it around his neck and hid it in his clothes. Obviously, to Xuanai, this was a star elemental key that was even more precious than the 12 zodiac gates. Holding this star elemental key, Xuanai said softly, "This is the key you gave me 7 years ago. I gave you the key." Noah was stunned. However, in the next second, a thought flashed through Noah's mind. Needless to say, Noah did not know star elemental magic at all, so he naturally did not have a star elemental key on him. However, 7 years ago, when he first met Lucy, Lucy gave a star elemental key as a gift to Noah. And by chance, Noah gave that key to a little girl. A little girl who was bullied by a few gangsters in an alley and was saved by him. At that time, Noah and Levi went to the jewelry store together to order engagement rings for Mira and Lisanna. It was at that time that Noah met that little girl by chance. He still remembered that the little girl had snow-white hair that leaned towards blue. Moreover, she introduced herself like this. "My name is Xuanai." The memories of the past were instantly recalled by Noah all at once. "You?" Noah looked at Xuanai in bewilderment and said uncertainly, "You're the child in the alley at that time." Hearing this, Xuanai tightened her grip on the key. She finally raised her head and looked at Noah. "So, you still remember me?" At this moment, a smile finally appeared on Xuanai's face. However, that smile seemed a little sad. "At that time, Lord Noah told me that he hoped that I could become a powerful magic shooter. In order to live up to your expectations, I have been training hard all these years. I only hope that one day, I can stand proudly in front of you and tell you that I have become a powerful magic shooter." Xuanai's expression became a little self-deprecating as she said this. "It's a pity that I didn't understand how weak I was until now." "You?" Noah opened his mouth and sighed softly. "You're not weak. I've said it before, you're already very strong. But, to you, I'm incomparably weak." Xuanai bit her lips and closed her eyes as a drop of tear rolled down her cheek. "The current me is simply unable to stand beside you, let alone stand before you. You said that you were a magic shooter from the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom. It was because of this that I joined Saber-Tooth." Xuanai's voice was laced with tears. "But, you're not there at all. You're a liar." Noah fell silent and looked at Xuanai with a complicated gaze. At this moment, Noah finally understood why Xuanai asked him to leave Fairy Tail and join Saber-Tooth. It wasn't because Xuanai looked down on Fairy Tail. This young girl only hoped to join the same guild as him. Unfortunately, fate made a fool of people and made this young girl walk on a path that was completely different from her dreams. Now that the two of them had finally crossed paths, Xuanai naturally wanted to make up for her past regrets. That was why Xuanai appeared in front of Noah. Chapter 1686. Actually, at that time, if Noah had directly told Xuanai that he was the sorcerer of Fairy Tail, then this girl would not have suffered so much for 7 years. Unfortunately, at that time, Xuanai was only a child who had just turned 10 years old. If he told a child that he was a magic shooter from Fairy Tail, the child would probably have a confused look on his face, right? After all, could you expect a child who was just over 10 years old to understand how great Fairy Tail was and what kind of existence it was? Because of this, in order to let the young Xuanai understand what kind of guild she was in, Noah said that he was the sorcerer of the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom. In the end, because of this sentence, Xuanai, who desperately wanted to get close to Noah, went further and further away. She then joined the Saber-Tooth that rose after the Fairy Tail fell from grace. If this could not be said to be fate playing tricks on people, then what could be called fate playing tricks on people? Although he did not know how Xuanai had been all these years, but looking at her unusual persistence on the first day they met, and now sitting on the ground crying weakly, Noah could imagine how painful Xuanai's heart was. Thus, Noah could only remain silent. Because Noah and Xuanai's conversation was not very loud, there were so many spectators present, and naturally no one could hear the conversation between the two. However, everyone clearly saw Xuanai's sad and crying appearance. Thus, everyone understood and shut their mouths, giving Noah and Xuanai some time. It was not that everyone here was so considerate, but after the competition, the contestants would have a short exchange after the competition, which was not a strange thing. Some people would appreciate each other after the battle. Some people would hate each other after the battle. Some people would talk to each other after the battle. Some people would ask each other to come again after the battle. That was the fun of the competition. Thus, everyone present tacitly gave Noah and Xuanai some time. Even Chapati, who was on the rostrum, did not speak anymore. However, this period of time could not be too long. No one knew if Noah had realized this, but he suddenly spoke. "Let's play fairy tale." Xuanai raised her head. Her cheeks were wet and her eyes were red and swollen. She stared blankly at Noah. Clearly, Xuanai never thought that Noah would say this. In front of Xuanai, Noah cast his gaze on her and said, "Actually, things aren't as complicated as you think, and there's no need for you to be so clumsy. If you really want to stand in front of me and tell me that you're a powerful magic shooter, then you've already done it. I've said it before, you're very strong. Even in fairy tale, you can be ranked in the top 10. With this level of strength, I believe that no one would deny that you're a powerful magic shooter." Noah's voice clearly entered Xuanai's ears. "And if you want to join the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom, then just join fairy tale. After this year's Great Demon Battle Arts competition, we'll definitely become the strongest. That way, everything will go back to square one. Even if we can't eliminate the pain you've suffered in the past 7 years, at least we can redeem the regret that you wish to redeem. To tell you the truth, after the Great Demon Battle Arts competition, I'll be inheriting the position of the guild leader of fairy tale." Noah smiled slightly. "At that time, if you can join my guild, I think I'll be very happy." After leaving these words, Noah directly turned around, and under Xuanai's gaze, he slowly left in the direction of fairy tale's contestant area. Looking at Noah's gradually disappearing figure, Xuanai was stunned. Because that back was exactly the same as the last scene that Xuanai saw when she was saved by Noah in the alley 7 years ago. However, that was to be expected. For Xuanai, Noah saved her when she was a child and changed her fate. That was something that happened 7 years ago. But for Noah, that was only about half a year ago. In half a year's time, Noah naturally wouldn't have changed that much. His back was naturally exactly the same as 7 years ago when Xuanai knew him. This made Xuanai feel as if she had returned to square one. Noah was telling Xuanai this. It wasn't too late to start afresh. As long as Xuanai joined fairy tale, she would be able to do it. "Do you want to join fairy tale?" Looking at Noah's gradually disappearing figure, Xuanai fell into silence. And when Noah returned to the contestant area, he was greeted with Myra's gentle smile. "You've worked hard." Noah shook his head, reached out, and hugged his fiancée. His heart was calm. In the dual portion of the Great Demon Battle Arts competition, besides the battle between Noah and Xuanai, there were 3 more matches. In the first match, a guy named Black Snake from Raventail fought against a sorcerer named Lamia Scale. Black Snake was victorious. In the second match, Kagura from Mermaid Heel fought against Jenny from Blue Pegasus. Kagura won. As for the third match, it was naturally the battle between Fairy Tale Team A and Cotter Cerberus. And the contestant for Fairy Tale Team A was Alusha. His opponent was an S-ranked sorcerer from the Cotter Cerberus. This match was quite interesting. Both sides were active S-rank wizards in the guild, their strength was almost on par, and it was hard to tell who would win. In the end, Alusha won by a narrow margin and won the match. After this day of competition and duels, the 8 teams obtained different scores, and the rankings changed a lot. First place, Fairy Tale A Team, 26p. Second place, Fairy Tale B Team, 24p. Third place, Raven Tail, 24p. Fourth place, Sabertooth, 20p. Fifth place, Mermaid Heel, 17p. Sixth place, Blue Pegasus, 15p. Seventh place, Lamia Scale, 12p. Eighth place, Cotter Cerberus, 10p. Finally, Fairy Tale jumped to the top of the list, and the 2 teams occupied the first and second place respectively, causing many of the magic shooters in Fairy Tale to shed manly tears on the spot. On the other hand, Sabertooth was pushed out of first place and was even pushed down to fourth place. Not only was it overtaken by Fairy Tale, but it was also overtaken by Raven Tail. In response, the group of sorcerers from Sabertooth remained silent as they left the venue. Noah just happened to notice this scene. Looking at Suno, who was following behind Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Olyago with her head lowered, her expression completely indiscernible, Noah thought of the personality of Sabertooth's leader, Germain, and narrowed his eyes slightly. Chapter 1687. Following the perfect ending of the second day of the Great Demon Showdown, night gradually fell. However, at this moment, in one of the corridors of Croca's palace, the captain of the Sakura Knights, Alcardios, was walking forward with powerful footsteps. Taking a closer look, not only was Alcardios' expression rather solemn, but there was also a faint trace of shock in his eyes. Recalling the terrifying scene he saw in the venue during the day, Alcardios' expression became more and more dignified, causing his footsteps to quicken. After walking for an unknown period of time, Alcardios arrived in front of a room. Standing at the door, Alcardios took a deep breath, stretched out his hand, and pushed the door open. What appeared before Alcardios was a vast and luxurious room. Moreover, from the layout, it was easy to see that this room belonged to a woman. Under such circumstances, Alcardios walked in without any hesitation. As soon as Alcardios walked into the room, a rather pleasant voice sounded. "You're here, Sir Alcardios." Hearing this, Alcardios stopped and raised his head to look ahead. In the deepest part of the room, in front of a window, there was a young girl with her back facing Alcardios. Bathed in the moonlight, the scene was extremely beautiful. It was a beautiful young girl wearing a gorgeous dress with emerald green waist-length hair. The young girl slowly turned her head, revealing her delicate and pretty face to Alcardios. She looked straight at him. "I knew that you would definitely come." "Yes." Alcardios lowered his head and bowed to the young lady who was much younger than him and looked much weaker than he was, as if he was a subject. "I have something very important to report, Princess." The young girl was the princess of the Fiori Kingdom Emerald. Emerald seemed to have already known what Alcardios wanted to say and closed her eyes. "Sir, you want to talk about the person who had an amazing performance in today's Great Demon Showdown, right?" "Princess already knows." Alcardios was startled at first, then nodded and said in an extremely serious tone. "Since the princess already knows, then I might as well say it directly. That man is very dangerous." "I know, not only I know, I believe that those who saw the power of that man today will clearly know how dangerous he is." Emerald's expression became serious. "Fortunately, we did not become enemies with that lord." "I don't think so, Princess." Alcardios immediately retorted. "Don't forget, our solar eclipse plan needs the power of archmages, and the 2 archmages that appeared in this great demon battle exhibition are more or less related to that man. If we plan to make a move on those 2 archmages, I believe that man won't let it go." "I understand your concern, Sir Alcardios, but you are mistaken. Emerald shook her head. We have been planning this for 7 years, and now, because of a person who suddenly appeared, you want to cancel the plan. Emerald lowered her head and softly said, I don't want to cancel the solar eclipse plan. In that case, it doesn't matter whether that person exists or not. The man shrugged. The reason why I didn't say it is because I don't think it is necessary to mention it. Princess only needs to implement the solar eclipse plan. Whether or not we will implement the solar eclipse plan will depend on the final result of the great demonic martial arts competition. Emerald raised her eyes and looked at the evil man. If the result of the great demonic martial arts competition is as you predicted, then I will start the solar eclipse plan. If not, then I am sorry, I will not use this plan. That is enough. The man suddenly smiled. Because, in the end, the result will be as I said. Leaving these words, the man's figure suddenly turned into a shadow, merged with Emerald's shadow, and disappeared. Looking at the man who disappeared into her shadow, Emerald was silent. In the courtyard under the moonlight, a shadow suddenly appeared without any warning and turned into the evil man's appearance. However, the smile on the man's face disappeared little by little, and his expression became a bit ugly. I have never told you that there is such a person in a fairy tale. The man gritted his teeth and said. Isn't that natural? From what I know of fairy tale, there is no such person. Who is that person? Why does he have such powerful strength? The man's face was full of uncertainty. No, that guy is definitely a variable. I have to find a way to deal with him, and don't let him ruin the final result of the great demonic martial arts competition. After saying that, the man turned into a shadow again and disappeared. Chapter 1688. At the same time, in the Saber-Tooth Inn, an atmosphere even heavier than the one in the palace was pervading in a spacious room that resembled a hall. Germain sat on the seat in the deepest part of the room with his eyes closed and his arms crossed. There was no expression on his face. However, Germain's body was emitting waves of mana that were visible to the naked eye. They rose from his body like mist and shook the surrounding air, causing the atmosphere to become somewhat chaotic. Looking at Germain in such a state, the archmages of Saber-Tooth, who were lined up neatly like an army, did not even dare to breathe loudly. Their faces were already covered in cold sweat. As for Justin, Logue, Lucifer, Olga, and Shuanai who were lined up at the front, they lowered their heads and remained silent. No one knew how long this scene lasted. Until a certain moment, Germain's voice sounded like a tiger's roar. 4th place, that low voice made everyone's heartbeat quicken slightly. 4th place. Germain repeated and opened his eyes. He stared at Justin and the others who were lined up at the front. His voice was low and terrifying. You actually reduced my Saber-Tooth to 4th place. Tell me, how should I punish you? Trash. Justin, Logue, Lucifer, and Olga all closed their eyes and were speechless. Obviously, the 4 of them chose not to face Germain's anger head-on. Shuanai also did not say anything. However, Shuanai was not afraid of Germain's anger. Instead, she kept thinking about what Noah had said to her, and thousands of thoughts flashed through her mind. Germain, who did not know what Shuanai was thinking, slowly leaned back on his seat and said expressionlessly. Although I've said it many times, I still have to tell you that my guild doesn't need trash who only know how to fail. Only those who continuously win are qualified to join my guild and become my army. So, you should know what I'll do, right? No one answered. Because, everyone was very clear that at this time, Germain would do something cruel. Justin, Germain suddenly said. Is there anything you want to say? I don't have anything to say, Sting said after a moment of silence. I have indeed fallen to last place in today's competition. I have tarnished the reputation of Saber-Tooth as the strongest. No matter what kind of punishment you give me, I will accept it. Steen. Rector couldn't help but call out softly, as if he couldn't bear to see what kind of punishment Steen would suffer. He turned his head away with a worried expression. Germain, on the other hand, shifted his gaze to Sting and snorted coldly. You're very smart. You didn't make any unnecessary explanations. If you dared to come up with any excuses, I would definitely punish you without hesitation. Seeing that you didn't lose in a head-on confrontation, I'll give you another chance. However, this is the only chance. Do you understand? Yes. A mere piece of trash actually wants to counterattack against me. Then let me see to what extent you can counterattack. Germain's body suddenly tensed up. Xuan'ai, who sensed that it was the precursor to an attack, also tightened her grip on the magic star key. Just as Xuan'ai was about to fight against the entire saber-tooth, an accident happened. Dong! Along with the sound of an explosion, the door of the hall suddenly burst open. A burst of flames and the impact blew the entire heavy door away. WH. What? What? What happened? The group of Saber-Tooth's magic shooters turned pale with fright. They hurriedly separated and gathered on both sides, away from the direction of the door. What's wrong? Sting, Logue, Lucifer, and Olga all looked at the door in surprise. Germain raised her head and looked over with a fierce expression. Xuan'ai, who was ready to fight a bloody battle, subconsciously turned her head and looked in the direction of the door that had exploded. In the next moment, the sound of footsteps slowly sounded from the explosion. Whoosh! It was as if a gust of wind suddenly blew through the entire inn, mixed with some magic power, and blew away the explosion and smoke that pervaded the air at the door. A foot suddenly stepped on a piece of debris left behind by the explosion of the door. Under the watchful eyes of all the magic shooters from Saber-Tooth, the figure gradually walked in. When the appearance of the intruder was revealed in front of everyone's eyes, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. You! Justin, Logue, Lucius and Olga all took a step back with a shocked expression. Among the people present, only Xuan'ai looked at the person who walked in from the door and couldn't help but cover her mouth. Her eyes, which had not wavered until now, were now filled with waves of emotions. Then, Xuan'ai called out in excitement and disbelief. Lord Noah! The person who had come was Noah. Stepping on the debris of the door, Noah walked into the gathering place of Saber-Tooth. His gaze was directed directly at Germain, and a cold light flashed in his deep, dark eyes. Early in the day, Noah had guessed that with Germain's arrogant, conceited, and ruthless character, it was impossible for him to let go of Xuan'ai's defeat. He would definitely make things difficult for Xuan'ai, and even expel her from the guild. For this reason, Noah directly followed him and hid in the dark, observing the development here. In the end, Noah still underestimated Germain. I originally thought that being expelled from the guild after one defeat was ridiculous enough. I didn't expect that there would be a guild leader who wouldn't allow a member to leave the guild and would even attack a member who wishes to leave the guild. Noah directly ignored the surrounding magic shooters who had a shocked expression and walked straight in the direction of Germain. His gaze was like an arrow shooting at Germain, carrying no emotion in it. As expected, shouldn't we place too much hope on small fries? His emotionless words finally woke everyone up from their stupor. Damn it! Cold sweat broke out on Sting's forehead. How did he come here? Rogue, Lucius, and Olga also clenched their fists, but their palms were wet, and their hearts were trembling. For Sting and the others who had witnessed the power Noah displayed during the day, Noah was simply the most terrifying existence in the world. Therefore, including the other members, everyone's hearts trembled at this moment, and they continuously retreated, wishing that they could get as far away from Noah as possible. On the contrary, Germain, who did not go to the great demon battle drill to watch the battle today, looked at Noah who was slowly walking towards him, and narrowed his eyes slightly. Who are you? Hearing this, Noah smiled indifferently, but there was no smile in his eyes. An insignificant member of the so-called trashy guild that you speak of. After saying this, Noah gently raised one of his hands. Clank. Accompanied by a wave of mana, like electric wires, magic patterns extended from Noah's raised arm. During this process, Noah did not stop walking, and continued walking towards Germain. I see, you're that Noah doll. Germain ignored Noah's approach, and coldly said. You actually dare to intrude into the headquarters of my army, how bold. No wonder this piece of trash who worships you dares to resist me. Very well, let me trample you under my feet, and clearly tell this defeated piece of trash what the consequences of disobeying me are. Germain walked past Xuan'ai, who had yet to react, and walked towards Noah. Don't you have a godly blade that can even cut stars? Show it to me. Germain could no longer say the rest of his words. Bang! In the midst of an explosion, Noah's figure suddenly turned into a bullet, and violently shot in front of Germain. Chapter 1690. Bang! In that instant, before anyone could react, the ground was stomped into pieces. Noah, who had turned into a bullet, streaked across the air and arrived in front of Germain. A pair of cold eyes were imprinted in Germain's eyes, causing Germain's expression to change drastically. Whoosh! His fist, which was covered with magic veins that looked like electric wires, suddenly blasted out. With a shocking whistling sound, the air trembled as it heavily bombarded Germain's chest. Bang! In the muffled explosion, the terrifying blow that was enough to split mountains directly blasted Germain into the ground. Dong! The shocking force suddenly acted on the ground, causing the ground of the entire hotel to sink abruptly. It was as if the ground had collapsed, layer by layer. Suddenly, the entire ground seemed to have been hit by a meteorite, causing a huge crater to appear. The shocking impact and smoke caused cracks to spread out along the ground like a spider web. Ah! The group of saber-toothed magic shooters let out sorrowful cries as they swayed from side to side amidst the violent shaking. They fell down in disarray, looking extremely miserable. Many of them were even directly blown away by the shocking impact. One by one, they hit the wall and spat out all the air in their lungs. Their heads tilted to one side, and they fainted. Even Sting, Rog, Lucius, and Olga were caught off guard by the sudden impact and vibration. They tried their best to stabilize their bodies, and their faces were full of horror. As for Xuan'ai, she seemed to be protected by something in the dark, and was not affected by the aftermath. She was only startled by the thick smoke and dust that blew away. She hurriedly raised her hands to block in front of her body, blocking the sand and gravel that were flying towards her face. When the impact and the thick smoke and dust finally subsided, the group of saber-toothed magic shooters in the spacious hall of the hotel had already fallen to the ground. They were lying on the ground one by one, softly moaning in pain. These people were not violently blown away, smashed onto the ground, or hit by the gravel that shot out like bullets, causing them to suffer varying degrees of injuries. In the end, there were only 5 people who were able to remain unscathed. They were Sting, Rog, Lucius, Olga, and Xuan'ai. The 5 of them slowly raised their heads from the arms in front of them, and looked forward with lingering fear. The only scene in front of them was a deep collapsed crater. And in the crater, Germain, who had been punched into the ground by Noah. Germain, who was deeply embedded in the ground, violently spat out a mouthful of blood, drenching his face and chest. In front of Germain, Noah turned around and swung his smoking fist forcefully. The magic patterns that spread over it like electric wires immediately dissipated. Then, Noah's sarcastic voice rang out. As long as the latter was with him, no matter how trashy, who could look down on them? Just like what Xuan'ai said. No matter how strong Sabertooth was, as long as Noah was in the guild, they would not be able to compare. Fairy tale. Just what kind of guild could attract such a frightening existence to protect it? How could that person be so strong? Could they really win against that person and keep their title as the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom? If they couldn't, wouldn't they be chased out one by Germain? At this moment, an unprecedented sense of loss attacked Sting, Rog, Lucius, and Olga. At this moment, a somewhat flirtatious voice sounded. It seems that someone has caused a huge ruckus. Sting and the others were shocked and quickly turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. They saw that beside Germain, who was covered in blood, a woman wearing a cheongsam was looking around, her eyes full of sarcasm. The strongest guild was actually taken down by one person. Fortunately, no one found out yet. Otherwise, the entire Fiori Kingdom would laugh at us tomorrow, right? Looking at the woman who suddenly appeared without any warning, Sting and the others exclaimed in surprise. Miss? Surprisingly, it was Maniba. Ignoring Sting and the others, Maniba lowered her head and looked at Germain, who was covered in blood, and fainted. A touch of disdain and sarcasm appeared on her face. This is the result of the Reign of Terror. What a joke, Father. Sting and the others glanced at each other, then moved towards Maniba in unison. Young miss, Lucifer inquired. Now, what should we do? It's just that someone is looking for trouble. As the contestants, you just need to continue the competition. Maniba sneered. But, I didn't expect Xuanai to betray us. Let me take her place. The others could only nod. Chapter 1691. Ahem, in Fairy Tales Inn, in front of all the members, Noah coughed and said. Well, that's how it is. From today onwards, Xuanai will officially be a member of our guild. Hearing this, the group of Fairy Tales magic shooters first looked at each other in dismay, then turned their heads and looked at Noah's side. There, Xuanai no longer had the straightforwardness and strength that she showed before. Her delicate face carried traces of nervousness. Under everyone's gaze, she bent down and bowed deeply. I am the newcomer, Xuanai Argulia. Please give me some pointers. At this time, Xuanai's heart was filled with nervousness and apprehension. Because, after bringing Xuanai here, Noah did not give any explanation at all. He just directly told the members of Fairy Tale that from today onwards, Xuanai would be a member of the guild, and that was it. In other words, almost everyone present did not know why Noah suddenly brought Xuanai back, and brought the magic shooter of Saber-Tooth who had beaten Fairy Tale so badly yesterday into the guild. So, how could Xuanai not be nervous? After all, Xuanai had publicly tried to poach Noah from the guild in front of everyone in Fairy Tale several times. She had also repeatedly said that Fairy Tale was not as good as Saber-Tooth. Even today and yesterday, she still represented Saber-Tooth in the competition. Bringing such a person into the guild without any explanation, and even allowing him to join the guild, who wouldn't be the first to criticize him? At least, that was what Xuanai thought. Unfortunately, in the next moment, Xuanai was completely dumbfounded. She saw a group of Fairy Tale's magic shooters suddenly gathered around Xuanai, surrounding this young girl, and began to make a ruckus. Oh. There's actually a new member. And such a cute girl. How many years has it been since a new member joined our guild? This is great. Hey, can I call you Kuno-chan? If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. The noise and enthusiasm from the surroundings made Xuanai, who was full of uneasiness, panic. She paced back and forth, not knowing what to do. At this moment, Lisanna suddenly squeezed through the crowd and forcefully separated the crowd around Snow Nai. She scolded in a rather angry tone. I'm talking about you. Don't scare her. Mira also stepped forward and arrived in front of Snow, revealing a gentle and sweet smile. Welcome to Fairy Tale. I'm Mira. Can I just call you Xuanai? Snowy nodded subconsciously. Clearly, she hadn't recovered from the enthusiasm of the guild members. What's wrong? Are you scared? Mira looked at Snow worriedly. I'm really sorry. Everyone was just too happy. It's been a long time since a new member joined our guild. Please don't mind. Yeah, Lisanna said with a sigh. Although it has only been a few months for us, for our companions in the guild, it has been 7 years since the last time we joined. For the past 7 years, only members have left the guild. There has never been a new member. That's why everyone is so happy. I don't mind. Please don't worry, Snow shook her head and said softly after hesitating for a moment. But, is it really okay for me to join just like that? What's wrong? Asked Alyssa, who had appeared out of nowhere. Could it be that there's something wrong? No, there's nothing like that, Snow stammered. It's just that before this, I've said some very rude things to everyone. What? So you're referring to that kind of thing? Naz said casually. We've long forgotten about that kind of thing. Love. Habby flew in the air and raised his hand. Because Naz is an idiot. Well said, I agree with that. Gray folded his arms and nodded while glancing at Snow. But, you're really strong. I couldn't fight back against you in yesterday's battle. If there's a chance, I'll definitely find you for revenge. The meaning of revenge is not to make things difficult for Miss Shu and I, but to compete with you. Wendy hurriedly explained. So, please don't worry about being ostracized. We're all very good people. We'll definitely get along well with Miss Snow. If it's a competition, then fight it out with me when the time comes. Naz immediately shouted loudly. Then, he seemed to remember something and glared at Gray. Hey! That naked pervert over there. You just scolded me, didn't you? Ha! Gray glared back, unwilling to be outdone. When did I scold you? You still want to lie to me? Undoubtedly, you just scolded me. You called me a pervert. Naz, is there something wrong with your head? Undoubtedly, the person who scolded you is hubby. And you're the one who scolded me as a pervert. Gray, how could hubby scold me? He's a cat. Naz, what's so strange about a talking cat scolding people? And it's not the first time you've been scolded. Idiot. Gray, what did you say? Droop your eyes. Naz, I said you're an idiot. Hang your eyes. Gray, do you want to fight? Pervert. Naz, just what I want. Bring it on. Idiot. Gray, so, without any hesitation, Naz and Gray rolled into a ball and fought with each other. The surrounding tables were smashed into pieces and the debris flew everywhere. All of a sudden, the surrounding people were swept into it, and they started to panic. Whoa! What are you doing? Go outside to fight. You two idiots. Everything was smashed by you. My wine. My meat. Naz. Gray. Compensate me. Everyone was angry. One by one, they all joined in and wrestled with Naz and Gray. Suddenly, the entire bar of the hotel was in chaos. Tables, plates of food, and glasses of wine were all smashed and spilled all over the floor. At that moment, Alusha stood up and shouted righteously. Stop what you're doing. As soon as she said that, a plate of dishes flew directly over. Paw dash. With a crisp sound, the plate smashed directly on Alusha's face, causing the sauce to splash on Alusha's face. The entire hotel suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked in Alusha's direction with a look of horror. Then, Alusha reached out and pulled the plate off her face. She opened her eyes with the sauce all over her face. Her delicate face was completely filled with rage. You idiots! With a roar, Alusha held two knight swords and charged over. Everyone cried out in alarm. Not long after, the cries of alarm turned into screams, causing the whole scene to become a mess. Era. Mira held one side of her face, her smile still gentle. It's like this again. Really, even Alusha joined in. Lisanna complained. What about the compensation? Ahahaha. Lucy laughed dryly. I can already imagine what kind of expression the president will have when he comes back. Wah. Wendy was at a loss. What? What should we do? Xiao Lulu turned her head away. What a bunch of idiots. Looking at Naz, Gray, and Alusha's group who were in a mess, then looking at Mira and the others who were used to it, Xuanai raised a hand and clenched it in front of her, muttering in disbelief. Is this the fairy tale? Xuanai didn't notice. At this moment, a smile unconsciously appeared on her face. Noah, who had been observing Xuanai from the side, saw this scene and smiled without leaving a trace. Chapter 1692. In a room of the fairy tale hotel, Xuanai's clothes were completely removed, and her delicate body was completely exposed to the air. Oh, looking at Xuanai's naked body, Mira, Lisanna, and Lucy all exclaimed in surprise. Because Xuanai's figure was quite good. Her skin was as white as a pearl, and looked very soft and elastic. The curves of her body were bent in an extremely perfect and seductive way, which could be said to be the golden ratio. In addition to her full upper circumference, perky buttocks, and smooth and slender thighs, even to Mira, Lisanna, and Lucy, who were also women, she was quite attractive. The girl in front of them was definitely a femme fatale. If a man saw this body, there was a 99% chance that he would lose his rationality, right? Under the gaze of Mira, Lisanna, and Lucy, Xuanai's face was slightly red as she hugged her chest and said shyly. Please. Please don't look at me like that. Sorry. Lucy put her palms together and said embarrassedly. It's just that Xuanai's figure is too good. Even we were stunned when we saw it. That's right. Lisanna puffed up her cheeks in a fit of pique. Her figure looks even better than mine. How enviable. There's no such thing. Xuanai hurriedly denied. I think that Lady Lisanna's figure is also very good. Is that really so? Lisanna touched her lower abdomen. But I still want to be slimmer. Otherwise, after the Great Demon Battle exhibition, I won't look good in the wedding dress. Wedding dress? Xuanai was slightly startled. Then, she thought of something important and came to a realization. I remember that Lady Mira and Lady Lisanna are already engaged to Lord Noah, right? That's right. Lucy said with a smile. Moreover, after the Great Demon Battle exhibition, the three of them are planning to get married. Xuanai looked at Mira and Lisanna in surprise. Really? Is it really too sudden? Mira smiled embarrassedly. However, for Xuanai, our engagement with Noah was already 7 years ago. It's already too late to get married now. That's right, she said with a hint of longing in her eyes. I've always wanted to be Big Brother Noah's bride, and now I can finally fulfill my wish. Seeing the traces of happiness on the faces of Mira and Lisanna, Xuanai knew how much they liked Noah. Xuanai's heart was filled with envy. He was envious of two things. First, Mira and Lisanna had found their own happiness, and the other party was Noah. Secondly, Mila and Lisanna's feelings for Noah were very deep. After all, Noah was similarly the target of Xuanai's yearning. The so-called longing was very easy to appear together with love. So, logically speaking, it wouldn't be strange for Xuanai to feel jealous and resentful toward Mira and Lisanna. However, at this moment, Xuanai's heart didn't have any jealousy or resentment, only envy. She envied Mira and Lisanna for being able to accompany Noah for the rest of their lives. Well, although Noah is a perfect person in all aspects, he's still a man after all. Lucy smiled awkwardly as she tried to smooth things over. Even if he's a bit of a playboy, it's nothing strange, right? You can't speak up for him like that, Lucy. Lisanna pouted. You can't be a playboy. We'll get jealous too. Undoubtedly, we'll get jealous, but we can't really get angry at him. Mira smiled. After all, if we really get angry at him for being a playboy, Lisanna and I won't be able to obtain happiness together. Yeah, Lisanna said in annoyance. It's really too easy for him. The few young ladies immediately looked at each other. Soon after, they all burst out laughing. All right, it's time to get down to business. Mira held a seal in her hand and came in front of the naked Xuanai. She squatted down, looked at her side abdomen, and gently stroked a coat of arms on it. That was the gilt coat of arms of Sabertooth. The reason why Xuanai was stripped naked was because of this coat of arms. Looking at this coat of arms, Mira raised her head, looked at Xuanai, and smiled slightly. Just cover this coat of arms, right? Yes. Xuanai nodded without any hesitation. Sorry to trouble you, Master Mira. Mira nodded with a smile, raised the seal in her hand, and stamped it on top of it. In the next moment, a pure white fairy coat of arms covered the previous saber-tooth coat of arms, and appeared on Xuanai's side abdomen. At this point, Xuanai officially became a member of Fairy Tale. Stroking the pure white coat of arms on her body, Xuanai smiled from the bottom of her heart. This will do. Mira stood up, and held Xuanai's hand. Let's go, Noah is still waiting for you. Only then did Xuanai react, and nodded her head. Chapter 1693. At the same time, in the hall outside the room where Mira, Lisanna, Xuanai, and Lucy were staying, Noah was sitting in front of a sofa with a box in his hand. Looking at the box in his hand, Noah smiled helplessly. I didn't expect that I would only remember their existence now. Fortunately, I didn't directly forget about it. Otherwise, it would be a bit of a waste. The things in the box had indeed been forgotten by Noah for quite some time. Looking at the time in the outside world, the things in the box had been left unused by Noah for more than 7 years. It was only today that Noah remembered it and asked Makarov to go back to Magnolia to find the box in his room and bring it here. With them, I think that Xuanai's strength should be a level higher, right? Noah intended to give the things in the box to Xuanai. Consider it as making up for the suffering that girl has suffered in the past 7 years. This was Noah's idea. After all, Noah had to bear part of the responsibility for Xuanai's unhappy 7 years. Moreover, Xuanai had already joined Fairy Tale and was already one of Noah's important companions. In addition, the person who led Xuanai into Fairy Tale was Noah, and even the person who made Xuanai a magic shooter and a star elf archmage was Noah. It was reasonable for Noah to give the things in the box to Xuanai. Just as Noah was thinking about this, a burst of sweet laughter and panicked voices came from the room, attracting Noah's attention. Then, Noah heard such a conversation. Wait. Wait. Lady Mira. Lady Lisanna. Xuanai, what's wrong? Don't you have to hurry up and go out? Big brother Noah is still waiting for you. Lisanna, but I'm like this now. Xuanai, it's okay, Xuanai is so cute, Noah will definitely like you. Mira, alright, hurry up and get out. Lucy, wait a minute. You know, when that panicked voice sounded, the door was opened and Xuanai was pushed out by several hands. When the panic-stricken Xuanai was pushed out, the door was immediately closed, leaving Xuanai alone in front of the door, not knowing what to do. Looking at Xuanai standing in front of the door, Noah's breath slightly stagnated. This was because right now, Xuanai was only wearing a thin shirt that was extremely transparent. One could even clearly see the skin underneath. Other than a thin shirt, Snow didn't seem to be wearing anything else, revealing a pair of smooth, white, and slender thighs. That seductive outfit was simply challenging the limits of a man's rationality. At the very least, Noah's mouth was slightly agape. He couldn't react in time. Lord Noah. Xuanai tried to push the door, but in the end, she couldn't enter. She could only resist Noah's gaze and protect her body with both hands. She spoke softly as if she was about to cry. Please don't look at me like this. Hearing this, Noah finally reacted and quickly retracted his gaze. He secretly cried out in his heart. Who would have thought that he would actually forget about it and leave the 3 keys behind until now? After understanding this, Xuanai was still somewhat hesitant. In desperation, Noah could only use his trump card. What? You don't like what I gave you? No. It's not like that. Xuanai stood up, more or less agitated. Definitely not like that. The overly agitated Xuanai did not notice. Because of the large movement, all kinds of terrible scenery started to be exposed from the thin shirt, causing Noah to be dumbfounded. He could only hurriedly speak. Then accept it properly. Who knows, you might need it tomorrow. Tomorrow? Xuanai was stunned. Yes, tomorrow. Noah nodded. Because the competition today was too intense, Gadgely used up a lot of energy, so, I want to let him rest for a day, and let you fight as a substitute member of Team B. Whoa. What? Xuanai was really surprised. But, without giving Xuanai a chance to reject, Noah said directly. Now, in the guild, other than the participants of Team A and Team B, you are the strongest. Don't you want to represent the guild in the competition? But Xuanai said as if she could not let go. I'm just a newbie. To us, there's no difference between new and old. Noah looked straight at Xuanai and said word by word. As long as it's a guild, then you are our comrade. We will fight for our comrades who have waited bitterly for us for 7 years, and win the victory of the Great Demon Battle Arts Exhibition. I also hope that you will contribute your strength for your comrades. This sentence pierced deeply into Xuanai's heart. For comrades. Xuanai muttered. For comrades, Noah nodded, picked up the 3 keys, and handed it to Xuanai. Xuanai looked at the 3 keys, and after a while, she took a deep breath, stretched out her hand, and held them tightly. Noah then smiled. Chapter 1694. Thus, the next day, Noah immediately announced to the members of Fairy Tale that Xuanai would take Gadgely's place today. As for Gadgely, he would stay in the hotel to rest. Regarding this, Gadgely was extremely unwilling, but in the end, he couldn't go against everyone's opinion. He could only lie on the bed with a sullen expression, refusing to make a sound, just like a child throwing a tantrum. Because of this, Alusha also made a last-minute decision to let Naz rest in the hotel, and let Elfman appear as a substitute member of Team A. Naturally, Naz also resisted with all his might, making more noise than Gadgely, but in the end, he was knocked down by Alusha with a single punch, and became completely silent. Just like that, a group of Fairy Tale magic shooters arrived at the dome, and just like yesterday, they were divided into the contestant group and the spectator group, entering the venue from 2 different paths. Perhaps it was because enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road, but today, Noah's group also met a certain degree of archenemy. Sabretooth's group, who had just entered the passageway for the contestants, immediately stopped in their tracks when they saw Fairy Tale's group. Their expressions turned solemn. This was especially so for Sting, Logue, Lucius, and Olga. When they saw Noah walking at the head of the group, not only did their faces darken, there was even a hint of fear in their eyes. Under such circumstances, Noah noticed another person. A girl who was leading Sting, Logue, Lucius, and Olga's group. She was obviously the leader of the group, and was dressed in a somewhat flamboyant manner. Seeing this girl, Xuanai cried out in surprise. "Miss Xuanai." Meniba turned her gaze and cast it on Xuanai, and a smile that reminded people of a poisonous snake appeared on her face. "I didn't expect that after not seeing you for a few days, you would actually betray us. Xuanai, this choice of yours is not very wise." "No." The surprise on Xuanai's face slowly disappeared, and was replaced by her usual unswerving determination. "I think this is the best choice I have made in my life." "Oh." Meniba obviously didn't expect Xuanai to refute her like this. She was a little surprised and sneered. "You've changed a little, although these changes are a little stupid." Xuanai ignored Meniba's mockery and looked straight at her. "Today, I will be a substitute member of a fairy tale bee. If I have the chance to go on stage, I won't lose." Mississippi, hearing this, Meniba's face sank. That was to be expected. Until yesterday, Xuanai was still a member of Sabertooth. After losing to Noah in yesterday's match, she joined Fairy Tale today and entered the competition as a member of Fairy Tale. If that happened, what would others think? Others would definitely think so. Looks like that contestant called UNI thinks that with the strength of Sabertooth, there's no way to beat Fairy Tale. That's why she joined Fairy Tale, right? Although people with discerning eyes would definitely be able to see some clues, but people are creatures that subconsciously believe what they see as reality, so there will definitely be many people who think so. If that was the case, then the reputation of Sabertooth would be completely ruined. So that's how it is. Meniba turned to look at Noah and said sarcastically. As expected of Fairy Tale, what a good move. Meniba thought that Noah deliberately let Xuanai go on stage to create this situation. Noah didn't want to explain. He just met Meniba's gaze and smiled. Your guild leader of Sabertooth originally planned to expel Xuanai from the guild. Since that is the case, who do you think should be blamed for this situation? Father is indeed too impulsive and arrogant. Meniba shrugged and smiled. But this is how our strongest guild does things. Hearing Meniba's words, Noah raised his eyebrows, took a step forward, leaned in front of Meniba, and said softly. So, your so-called title as the strongest guild won't last long. Meniba's flirtatious smile suddenly froze. After leaving this sentence, Noah glanced at Sting, Roger, Lucifer, and Olga. Under the four people's fearful gazes, he lightly said to his companions. Okay, let's go in. With that, Noah led the crowd into the venue. Meniba's eyes flickered as she stared at Noah's receding figure. Looking at Meniba, Sting asked tentatively. Young miss. I'm fine. Meniba took a deep breath and said seriously. Is he Noah Dole? She asked. It is indeed quite difficult to deal with. This man is too powerful, Lucifer said in a low voice. If we don't have a way to deal with him, I think it will be very difficult for us to win. Don't worry. I have as many ways to deal with a man as I want. Meniba smiled coldly. After all, an individual with great strength can become the best soldier and the best general. However, if one wants to become the best king, strength alone is not enough. I'll show him. Meniba licked her lips, her eyes shining with a vicious light. It's a battle style that belongs to kings. Oh! The loud cheers seemed to never stop. With the enthusiasm of the audience, they constantly reverberated in the air above the venue. Today, the dome, flattened bird was still full. The audience was everywhere, and it was very lively. Taking a closer look, there were actually people in the audience who started to raise the banner of fairy tale, cheering for fairy tale. Under such circumstances, on the platform, Chapati raised the microphone and expanded his voice to the entire venue. Ladies and gentlemen, now, it is finally the third day of our Great Demon Battle Arts competition. Today, what kind of wonderful performances will the 8 participating teams bring us? Even I, Chapati Laura, am looking forward to it. Along with Chapati's voice, a projection magic crystal unfolded in the air above the venue, reflecting the current rankings of the 8 participating teams. Among them, Team A and Team B, which belonged to Fairy Tale, firmly occupied the first place. The audience holding the flag of Fairy Tale and cheering for Fairy Tale collectively cheered. As we can see, currently, the 2 teams of Fairy Tale occupy the first and second place respectively. However, the difference in points between them and the other teams is not very big. It is entirely possible that they will be overtaken. After today, what kind of changes will occur in the rankings of the major guilds? Let's wait and see. Then, let's begin the third day of the Great Demon Battle Arts Competition Demon Subduing Hall. Chapati began to announce. Every team, please send a contestant to participate in the competition of Demon Subduing Hall. Noah looked at the projection magic crystal in the center of the venue and fell into deep thought. What? You don't know who to send? Laxus asked. If it's necessary, it's not a problem to send me. Mira, Snow, and Julian all looked at Noah. Under the gazes of his companions, Noah raised his head and spoke calmly. No. Let me go. Chapter 1695. You. Mira, Yukino, Jubian, and Laxus all looked at Noah in surprise. Noah nodded under everyone's gaze. In yesterday's competition, our Team A and B didn't get many points. Although we barely managed to stay at the top of the leaderboard because of the duels, it's just like what the report said. The gap between us and the other teams isn't that big. We could be overtaken at any time. So, I'll be the one in today's competition. Hearing this, Mira, Jubian, and Laxus fell into deep thought. That. Yukino said guiltily. I'm really sorry. It's all my fault, obviously. Yukino was concerned about Noah's words. After all, on the first day of the competition, Yukino was the one who defeated both teams. At that time, you weren't a member of our guild. Naturally, you had to do your best to get points for your guild. So, don't feel guilty about it. Noah patted Yukino's shoulder and walked past everyone into the competition venue. Then, I'll be right back. Be careful. Mira reminded him. Don't do anything rash. Noah raised a hand, indicating that they didn't need to worry. Then, he walked into the venue. At the same time, the other teams also decided on their candidates. Good. Every team has decided on their contestants. Chapati reported loudly. Let's see what kind of contestants the 8 teams sent out. Raven Tail has sent out contestant Obra. Sabertooth sent out contestant Olga. Mermaid Heel has sent out contestant Miliana. Blue Pegasus has sent out a loud contestant. Lamia Scale sent out contestant Karawa. Cotter Cerberus sent out contestant Nobali. Fairy Tale A has sent out contestant Alusha. Finally, the player that Fairy Tale B sent out is actually player Noah. Chapati couldn't help but raise his voice. Could it be that we're lucky enough to see that kind of terrifying power that's beyond the scope of human beings today? The audience suddenly burst into cheers. Clearly, the power that Noah had displayed yesterday was still vivid in the minds of those who had witnessed it with their own eyes. That kind of power that did not seem to belong to humans, would he be lucky enough to witness it again today? Everyone was looking forward to it, but they were also uneasy. At the same time, they felt extremely excited. Thus, flags with the emblem of fairy tale were continuously raised in the audience seats. There were even couplets painted with eye-catching paint. And the words marked on the horizontal couplet were a name. Noah Dole. Seeing this scene, Noah didn't know what kind of expression to make. He could only helplessly smile. Elisha, who had unknowingly appeared beside Noah, also smiled and said, "It seems that after yesterday, many people have become your fans." "I can see that." Noah shrugged. "I hope that this popularity will bring a lot of commissions and business to our guild in the future." Elisha couldn't help but laugh. The 8 contestants immediately gathered in the middle of the venue. Then, Jola took a step forward and looked at Noah with an unyielding smile on his rock-like face. "I can fight with you again. I hope that in the arena, I can at least take back some ground from you." It was clear that yesterday, Noah had easily defeated Jola with less than 1% of his power. Jola's speech didn't suffer a blow to this Saint Magus. It was better to say that after understanding the gap between him and Noah, Jola was like a young man who didn't want to admit defeat. "I won't lose either." Mariana raised her hand and giggled. "Whether it's little Elu or little Noah, don't think that you can easily beat me." Noah and Elisha both smiled and nodded. Apart from Jola and Mariana, the others weren't so optimistic. Olga, in particular, still looked at Noah with a trace of fear in his eyes. Then, let the demon-subduing hall competition begin. At this time, the pumpkin referee jumped out of nowhere and raised his hands high. "Let's welcome our venue demon-subduing hall." As soon as his voice fell, clang! In the sky above the venue, a purplish-black radiance suddenly flickered without any warning, illuminating the entire dome of the Frau-bird. Everyone present raised their heads and looked at the sky. There, a huge purple-black magic array suddenly rotated and covered the sky above the venue. Immediately after, along with a wave of mana, a gigantic darkness shrine slowly emerged from the purplish-black magic array. It descended from the sky and landed heavily in the direction of the venue below. Boom! After a loud sound, the huge temple of darkness fell on the ground of the venue, setting off a gust of wind and dust. The ground shook slightly, shocking many people. "That's..." Everyone looked at the huge temple of darkness in amazement. Under such circumstances, the pumpkin started giggling. "What you see now is our demon-subduing hall, which is also your next arena." Saying such a sentence, the pumpkin's tone became dangerous. "Of course, that's not an ordinary arena. Just like its name, Demon-Subduing Hall, there are a total of 100 monsters in this Temple of Darkness. There are 100 monsters in there." All the contestants were shocked. Even Noah couldn't help but raise his head and look at the demon-subduing hall in front of him, frowning slightly. He didn't expect the kingdom to capture monsters and bring them to the venue as part of a competition. If the captured monsters went berserk and rushed out of the demon-subduing hall, it would be no laughing matter. Could it be that the kingdom was so reckless because there were so many high mages from the guilds here? There was also a slight commotion in the surrounding audience, faintly feeling uneasy. Well, everyone, don't worry. Those aren't real monsters, they're just substitutes that we've materialized using magic. The pumpkin seemed to want to reassure everyone, waving her hand. "So, the monsters definitely won't rush out of the demon-subduing hall to hurt people, please don't worry." Hearing this, the surrounding audience breathed a sigh of relief in unison. However, the group of magic shooters exclaimed in amazement because of this. For the sake of a competition, the kingdom had actually gone to such great lengths to materialize 100 monsters using magic. It wouldn't be a big deal if they were just ordinary monsters. However, if they were placed in front of the elite magic shooters of so many outstanding guilds, those monsters definitely wouldn't be low-leveled, right? If Shifeng summoned 100 of these monsters, just how many magic crystals would he have to burn to cover the cost of his mana consumption? For the sake of a competition, the kingdom was actually willing to spend so much. How rich and overbearing. Thinking about it carefully, for the first day of the competition, the organizers had similarly used a town as a venue. The mana consumption was similarly frightening. In the end, with such a consumption, how much mana would the cost of a single great demon battle exhibition be? The organizers were truly rich and overbearing. The group of magic shooters sighed emotionally. Only Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. In Noah's opinion, no matter what, the kingdom couldn't possibly burn such a large sum of money every year for the sake of an entertainment festival. Unless, of course, the kingdom had other motives. Or perhaps, the mana that was consumed was actually the mana that was unknowingly absorbed from the archmages during the previous great demon combat exercises. In other words, the mana absorption that Noah had felt before was very likely the kingdom's doing. The kingdom. Noah raised his head and looked in the direction of the palace. I hope you won't do anything to make me unhappy, Noah didn't notice. While he was looking in the direction of the palace, a shadow quietly appeared in a corner of the venue. Chapter 1696. Just as Noah was looking thoughtfully at the palace's location, the explanation of the competition's content began. We've divided the 100 monsters into 5 grades, S, A, B, C, and D. According to the grades, the number and strength of the monsters are also different. Pumpkin raised a finger. Among them, there are 50 D-class monsters, 30 C-class monsters, 15 B-class monsters, 4 A-class monsters, and only 1 S-class monster, which is the highest level, Feng Luo said. All the contestants need to do is draw lots. Then, according to the order of the lots drawn, everyone will enter the demon subduing hall. Pumpkin raised a second finger. However, before entering the demon subduing hall, the contestants need to confirm how many monsters they want to challenge. Once they've confirmed, the demon subduing hall will have the same number of monsters as the contestant's choice, but the monsters' grades will be random. After that, the contestants can enter the demon subduing hall and challenge the monsters. No matter what the monster's grade is, each monster defeated will be counted as 1 point. Only after defeating all the monsters of their choice will they be able to exit the demon subduing hall. At this point, Pumpkin raised a third finger. There's one thing to note, and that is, if a contestant is defeated in the process of challenging the demon subduing hall, then in this round of challenges, no matter how many monsters they defeat, their points will return to 0. Unless they've successfully obtained points when they entered the demon subduing hall, they can only be eliminated with 0 points. Finally, according to everyone's points, we'll come up with a ranking. Pumpkin seemed to kindly remind them. By the way, although there's only 1 S-grade monster, according to the strength we've set, that monster has a strength that even the 10 great saint magicians may not be able to defeat. This sentence caused everyone's eyebrows to rise. At the same time, they had a deeper admiration for the palace's wealth. If even a monster comparable to the 10 great saint magicians was conjured, then the magic power required would undoubtedly be several levels higher. There's more, there's more. Don't think that the lowest grade D monster is weak. Pumpkin snickered mischievously. According to our settings, even if it's a D rank monster, it still has the strength to single-handedly defeat the elite magic shooters of your guild. As for C rank monsters, it will be doubled. As for B rank monsters, it will be doubled. Just like that, until S rank. If you aren't careful and die in the demon subduing hall, our guild won't be responsible. Pumpkin, the 8 magic shooters looked at each other, and many of them even had a solemn expression on their faces. Unlike yesterday and the day before, today's competition already had life-threatening factors. Moreover, the rules were quite complicated. After saying that, Noah walked into the dark divine hall called the demon subduing hall under everyone's shocked gazes. About a minute later, kaboom! Amidst a deafening roar, the huge divine palace of darkness suddenly exploded, setting off an extremely terrifying burst of wind and flames. Mixed with debris, it swept across the entire venue. The audience could only stare blankly as the demon-subduing hall, which was as fragile as paper, exploded piece by piece. It turned into fragments and scattered all over the ground. Then, it disappeared under the blast of wind and flames without leaving a trace. The hat on their heads and the snacks in their hands were blown away by the blast of wind and waves. They didn't even have time to react. When everyone finally reacted, Noah's figure slowly appeared in the scorching blast of flames. He floated down from mid-air and landed on the ground. Noah raised his head and looked at the audience in a daze. He shrugged and said, "Don't worry, I won't be able to win." "What? Do you still want to continue?" The entire venue suddenly fell silent. "Oh!" In the next second, the cheers that resounded throughout the venue burst out like a huge wave. "Do you still want to continue?" "Of course, there's no need to continue." Even Chapati was ignited as he announced loudly with great excitement. Noah Doria won first place in the demon-subduing hall competition. Without a doubt, he's first place. The audience stood up one by one and couldn't stop cheering. They shouted until their veins were bulging, but they still didn't have any self-awareness. The cheers reverberated and shook the air in the entire venue. As for the other 7 contestants, they looked at each other in dismay and smiled bitterly at each other. "Really?" Alusha looked at Noah, who was standing in the center of the venue, and her eyes became extremely gentle. "I can't compare to that guy at all." Noah seemed to feel Alusha's gaze. He turned his head and waved his hand. Seeing this, Alusha's eyes became even gentler. The magic shooters from the other guilds also couldn't help but smile bitterly in the audience and contestant area. They also offered the highest level of applause to Noah. At this moment, there were only 2 people who were sincerely unhappy with Noah's performance. One was in the contestant area of Sabertooth. There, Migniba's face was gloomy, and even her eyes were full of hostility. The other was in the contestant area of Raventail. Alexei stared at Noah, who was bathed in the cheers of the audience. He clenched his fists and squeezed out an extremely resentful voice from under his mask. "Damn it! Why is that guy so strong?" At this moment, a black shadow appeared behind Alexei. "Who is it?" Alexei turned his head abruptly and looked behind him. Then, Alexei heard such an incomparably evil voice. "I'm the one who gave you hope." Chapter 1697. In the end, because of Noah's activity, the 3rd day of the Great Demonic Battle Arts Exhibition turned into a one-man show. However, the points of the competition mainly came from the rankings. Even if Noah took on 100 monsters and won first place in the competition, the rest of the contestants still needed to determine who was better. However, even the kingdom could not continue to create 100 monsters in a short period of time for the contestants to challenge. Therefore, without any other choice, the organizers could only temporarily decide to use a small test to determine the rankings of the remaining 7 teams. The content of the test was based on the magic of each team sorcerer. The team with higher magic would be able to obtain a higher ranking. In the end, Noah won first place without any controversy. In the competition, the rankings of each team and the points they obtained, in order of highest to lowest, were as follows: Frowny Face Fairy Tale B Team, 10p. Lamia Scale, 8p. Fairy Tale A Team, 6p. Sabertooth, 4p. Mermaid Heel, 3p. Cotter Cerberus, 2p. Blue Pegasus, 1p. Raven Tail, 0p. After that, there were 4 more duels. The first duel, Mermaid Heel's Miriana vs Cotter Cerberus's Symes. Miriana won and obtained 10 points for Mermaid Heel. The second match was between Sabertooth's Lucifer and Blue Pegasus Ibu. Lucifer was victorious and earned 10 points for Sabertooth. The third duel, Laxus from Fairy Tale B Team vs Raventail's Aliax. Laxus won and obtained 10 points for Fairy Tale B Team. The fourth match was between Wendy from Fairy Tale A and Shalia from Lamia Scales. The two sides were tied, and each of them won 5 points for their respective teams. After one duel and 4 duels, each team's ranking had a small change. The changes were as follows. First place, Fairy Tale B Team, 44p. Second place, Fairy Tale A Team, 37p. Third place, Sabertooth, 34p. Fourth place, Mermaid Heel, 30p. Fifth place, Lamia Scale, 25p. Sixth place, Raventail, 24p. Seventh place, Blue Pegasus, 16p. Eighth place, Cotter Cerberus, 12p. At this point, the third day of the Great Demon Battle exhibition had smoothly ended. Fairy Tale's 2 teams had successfully maintained their position as the top 2 teams. Especially Team B, there was a 10-point gap between them and the third-place team, Sabertooth. If Sabertooth wanted to chase after him, he would have to put in a lot of effort. No matter what, today was still Fairy Tale's victory. A group of Fairy Tale sorcerers were chatting and laughing as they walked out of the giant egg. They walked towards the direction of the hotel. At the back of the group, Noah lowered his head and fell into deep thought. His eyebrows were tightly knitted. Mira, who was keenly aware of Noah's abnormality, hugged Noah's arm and gently said, "What are you thinking about?" Hearing this, Noah did not hide anything and directly said it. "I'm thinking about the raven tail." With this, his companions who were chatting and laughing around him also quieted down. It wasn't strange for everyone to have such a reaction. The reason was actually very simple. It was because Raventail did something that puzzled everyone. Laxus narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Are you thinking about why those guys directly forfeited in the competition?" This was the reason why Noah fell into deep thought. Today, Raventail's performance was too abnormal. Whether it was in the competition or the duel, Raventail's contestants directly forfeited and did not get any points. As a result, Raventail naturally fell from 3rd place to 6th place. This behavior was too abnormal. Originally, Noah did not care about Raventail at all. During the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, he let them do whatever they wanted. Because, in Noah's opinion, Ivan's tricks were too childish and ridiculous. Once Ivan made a move, Noah only had to take care of him, and this guild with bad intentions would be doomed eternally. But today, Raventail actually forfeited twice without hesitation, which made Noah a little suspicious. "I have a feeling," Noah said in a low voice. "Ivan might be planning to make a move." The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. His companions all gathered around Noah, and even their footsteps stopped. "Could it be just your imagination?" Gray said. "It's just forfeiting. Maybe those guys feel that they have no chance of winning." "Winning isn't important to those guys at all." Noah shook his head. "Those fellows' true target is us, or rather, our guild. To them, the Great Demon Martial Arts Exhibition is just a stage for them to achieve their goal. They've been targeting us since the beginning, so the results of the competition don't matter at all." "Then, in your opinion, those guys forfeited twice on this stage. What are they planning to do?" Alusha asked. "Could it be that they want to make a move outside the competition?" "That's very likely." Noah nodded and looked around. "In short, I feel that something is wrong. Everyone be careful, no matter what, do not act alone." "Understood." Everyone nodded in unison. Seeing Noah being surrounded by his companions and giving orders to his companions, and the companions around him carrying out Noah's orders from the bottom of their hearts, Shwenai felt a strange feeling in her heart. This feeling was completely different from when she was in Sabertooth. In that place, the relationship between the guild leader and the members was only that of a superior and subordinate, and even the relationship between the ruler and the ruled, there was not the slightest bit of affection to speak of. In that kind of guild, Xuanai could only feel the cold order and prestige. But here, Xuanai could feel waves of warmth. Because, here, the guild leader's every order was for the safety of the guild members. And the guild members' obedience was also due to their trust in the guild leader. Thus, Xuanai once again realized. Being able to join a guild like Fairy Tale was simply too good. Chapter 1698. The sky gradually darkened. After returning to the hotel, the group of people from Fairy Tale feasted and drank like they had done for the past 2 days. Then, those who had left halfway returned to their own residences. Before the start of the Great Demonic Combat Arts competition, the organizers had allocated the participating teams of each guild to the various inns in Colocus. The inns allocated to the participating teams were of different sizes according to the guild. For example, Saber-Tooth, because they were the previous first place, the inns allocated to them were of a larger scale and could accommodate all the members of the guild. This allowed all the sorcerers of Saber-Tooth to stay together. Unlike Saber-Tooth, Fairy Tale had always been the last in the previous competitions. Therefore, the place allocated to Fairy Tale was only one of the rooms in the inn. Of course, not only did the sorcerers of Fairy Tale not stay in the same inn as the contestants, but even Team A and Team B stayed in different inns. Therefore, after the members left the banquet, they could only go their separate ways and return to their respective residences. However, under Noah's instructions, everyone was prepared to leave in groups and ensure their safety. Thus, Mira, Xue, and Lisana left the banquet together. On the way, Lisana said apologetically to Mira and Xue. "I'm sorry, Sister Mira, Xue, I had to ask you to send me off." Originally, Makarov had already rented an inn for the members of Fairy Tale who did not participate in the competition to stay together. However, those fellows were either still causing trouble at the banquet or had already left. The timing of Lisana's departure was completely different. At first, Lisana had planned to wait for them to enjoy themselves before returning together. However, after knowing that Lisana was planning to leave, Mira and Xue volunteered to send Lisana back to the inn. "Well, I didn't plan to stay for too long anyway." Mira smiled indifferently. "Besides, I'm worried about you. This is just a coincidence. Lord Noah said that the guild called Raventail will most likely attack us outside the arena." Snow added. "That's why it's safer for us to move together." "But our hotel isn't in the same direction," Lisana said helplessly. "Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble." The banquet was held at the bar on the first floor of the hotel where Fairy Tale B was assigned to. In light of this, after Mira and Snow sent Lisana back to her residence, they still had to return to their own hotel. This meant that Mira and Snow were purposely taking a detour. It was because of this that Lisana apologized. "Just like what Xu and I said, it's safer to move together," Mira said gently. "If something were to happen to you, not only me, but Noah would also be very worried. It would be best if we could avoid an accident with just a little trouble. Moreover, I wouldn't find it troublesome at all." Snow lowered her head and said embarrassedly. "I've never tried using my own power to protect my companions. Now that I'm doing this, I'm actually a little happy." Hearing that, Mira and Lisana exchanged glances and smiled in unison. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Xuanai." Lisana held Xuanai's hand. "Xuanai is so powerful, she's really reliable. I feel very safe with Xuanai." Mira held Xuanai's other hand. "If the three of us are together, with Raventail as our opponent, there shouldn't be a problem." Noah said that in terms of strength, even in Fairy Tale, which was famous for its strict requirements for S-rank sorcerers, Xuanai had the qualifications to become an S-rank sorcerer and was qualified to be in the top 10 of the guild. As for Mira, she was an active S-rank sorcerer and was second only to Noah, Kildas, Laxus, and Alusha in the guild. She could be ranked in the top 5 of the guild. With Mira and Shuanai's escort, Lysana's safety would be guaranteed. After all, in Raventail, even the guild leader, Ivan, didn't have the ability to hurt Mira and Shuanai working together. Moreover, Lysana's strength wasn't weak and wasn't far from the frontline combat members of the guild. This way, with the Raventail's ability, it was not enough to hurt the 3 of them. Of course, the prerequisite was that the opponent only had a Raventail. With Mira and Lysana holding each of her hands, Shuanai, who was more or less in fear and trepidation, inadvertently caught a glimpse of the scene in front of her. The expression on her pretty face slightly froze and she abruptly stopped and raised her voice. "Lord Mira. Lord Lysana." Mira and Lysana were slightly startled by Shuanai's sudden stop and immediately felt that something was wrong. They abruptly turned their heads and looked forward. In the next moment, the 3 girls saw it at the same time. They didn't know when, but on the huge street, there wasn't a single person. Moreover, even the surrounding street lights suddenly dimmed and lost their light. Under such circumstances, a black fog like a whirlpool kept spinning in front of them, emitting waves of evil aura. The evil aura made Mira, who had the power of the demon in her body, feel a burst of vigilance. She couldn't help but stand in front of Lysana and stare forward while speaking in a deep voice. "Who?" The black fog that was spinning like a whirlpool suddenly stopped. In the next moment, the black fog suddenly exploded and turned into a black wave that surged out. Mira, Lysana, and Shuanai were all shocked. They only had time to do this before the thick black fog surged in front of the 3 girls. At this critical moment, the only one who reacted was Mira. "Danger!" Mira quickly reached out and pushed Shuanai and Lysana away at the same time. The surging black fog was like a rolling wave, covering Mira and swallowing her. Shuanai and Lysana, who were pushed away by Mira, fell to the ground. Looking at Mira, who was swallowed by the black fog, they both exclaimed in shock. "Sister Mira! Lord Mira!" Almost at the same time, a small black shadow scurried from behind the 2 girls and directly rushed toward Lysana. Whing! Along with a soft trembling sound, Lysana, who was about to get up and rush into the black fog to save Mira, suddenly felt a tremor all over her body. Then, the mana in her body actually disappeared in a moment, leaving not a trace. Immediately, Lysana lost all her strength. Lysana only felt her vision suddenly spin before her body swayed and she fell unconscious. "Lord Lysana!" Shuanai panicked and hurriedly hugged the fallen Lysana. Looking at the unconscious girl, she gritted her teeth and glared at the black fog in front of her. "Who? Who is it?" In the rolling black fog in front of her, a sinister laughter rang out. Then, the words entered Shuanai's ears. "What? Don't you recognize me?" As soon as the voice fell, a figure slowly walked out of the thick black fog and entered Shuanai's vision. The newcomer had long hair that was half black and half gray, and it was tied up and hung behind his back. It was the sinister man who had appeared in Eufatsue's room in the palace. The sinister man looked at Shuanai and the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Long time no see, Shuanai." Looking at the man full of evil aura, Shuanai first stared at him. In the next second, her eyes suddenly widened as she muttered in disbelief. "You? Could you be?" The sinister man revealed a sinister smile. "You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.